Hello, this is Ken Ward here for another edition of Plain Talk here on Eagle Eye TV. This week we'll be talking to two members of the Alabama legislature who just happen to be Auburn grads, one Democrat and one Republican. We're joined first by Representative Joe Lovvorn from here in Auburn, who is a Republican who currently is serving in House District 79. Thank you, Representative Lovvorn, for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Ken.
My first question is, you took over after former House Speaker Mike Hubbard was convicted of several felony counts of public corruption. How have you worked to try to bring confidence and character back to District 79?
Well, with everything the people of our district went through for a couple of years of trials and then the eventual removal from office, I've tried to focus on healing with our district, because our district went from the #1 position in the House of Representatives to the 105th position overnight. And so I've been trying to build bridges down there and try to regain some of the clout, if you will, to make sure that our district is remembered and taken care of when it comes to budget time, to policy procedures. And I tell people over there, my job is to worry about the future. The legal system is taking care of the past, and I've just focused on the future with all my conversations and within any legislation I've dealt with.
The 2018 House Republican Caucus's legislative priorities have been coined the Flag, Family, and Country agenda. Can you explain some of the key priorities of this agenda?
Well, the reason for that agenda was with a lot of things going on and divide in this nation, it's a lot revolving around standing up for pride and American pride issues. And so I think the purpose of this caucus agenda is to remind people it's okay to be proud of where you are. It's okay to be proud of where you stand and poke your chest out and be proud to be an American and be proud to be an Alabamian. And then we work on our differences. Our differences shouldn't divide us when it comes to being proud of where we raising our families, where we work, and where we choose to live our lives. And through Veterans Affairs, we've made it a standardized where veterans are allowed free into our state parks. And that's a good person to have in our state parks. They're good people that understand and believe in serving this country. They're going to take care of things. So having them there and bringing their families to the park, we want to make sure we're encouraging. We've done tax breaks for companies that will hire veterans and employ veterans throughout the state. You know, we are a heavily military state, meaning we've got several key bases in this state that play a vital role in defense of this nation. And there's also, with that comes jobs created by having that stronghold. And so we want to make sure people that serve time in Alabama think of when their time of service is over, Alabama is a place I would like to live and raise my family and live out my retirement years. And then in turn, we get a huge return on our investment.
You were talking about some quality of life things of that nature. Education is a big factor in that. I know Auburn and Lee County is a big education area. Can you describe a little bit? I know you serve on some of the education committees in the House. Can you describe talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, to me, education is our #1 priority in this state. It's like planting seeds. I often tell people the old saying, the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. The second best time is today. So if we can continue planting those seeds today in education, starting with our pre-K program that we funded this year, another $20 million to expand. And we've got the highest higher ed budget allotment in years. Every regional, every higher ed in the state has gotten an increase. And we've gotten a raise to our teachers to make sure they're adequately paid as much as possible. I wish we'd give them more of a raise, but we can't. We're going to give them a responsible raise that we can afford. And when I was elected, I knew that education was a priority for our district. It was a priority for our state. And so I worked from the moment I was elected to build a relationship with the Speaker of House, Matt McCutcheon, to make it a priority for our district, and the importance of, we've been through a lot with my predecessor's trial and removal of office. We needed a victory for our district, and a victory for our district would be a position on the Education Ways and Means Committee, which allocates $6.7 billion a year for education every year. And I I advised that to Speaker McCutcheon. He said, that is a big ask, Joe. And I told him, here's 20 reasons why. And I gave him a list of why it's important for Auburn and the representative representing Auburn to have a seat at that table. And I tell you, that being part of that committee, knowing where the money's going in this state for education and seeing and helping prioritize in a responsible spending way has been one of the highlights of being able to serve in the legislature.
During in recent days, we've seen a lot of attention on guns and things of that nature. One of your colleagues and a candidate for Lieutenant Governor, Representative Will Ainsworth, has introduced some legislation that would allow for teachers in the state of Alabama to be armed. This is something that President Trump has also proposed after the Florida school shooting. Do you see this as a possible solution to some of the school violence we've seen, especially here in our state?
Well, when it comes to our children's safety, I feel all subjects should be on the table. It's not a partisan issue. Safety is an issue for all of us. And I've seen the basics of his bill, and we all have had teachers that probably should not have a gun. We've had some that should be able to have a gun. But in working in public safety for 21 years in this community, you don't want to create a new problem by trying to solve an old problem. And I look forward to working with our education community and law enforcement to say, what do you need from us? How can we make our schools safer? What's your suggestion? Because we're the conduit for the funding, we're the conduit for some of the policies that would allow them to do that. And I'm not sure what the answer is. I think we're all going to work. There's going to be a mixture of suggestions brought together and ideas to try to make our children safe. I drop a 9 and 10-year-old off every morning into a public school, and it's on my mind, are they safe today? And we are very fortunate in our community. We have a strong school resource officer program. We have some strong security steps in place, but could always be improved. But I think the answer is working with our education system and our law enforcement community, get the ideas and pull those together for what's the best solution.
We talked about this a little bit earlier when we were discussing education, but Alabama's budgets have improved this year. Everybody can see that with Medicaid actually asking for less funding than they have in the past instead of asking for increased funding. But given the fact that the general fund always seems to be struggling over the years, do you think these struggles are behind us now, or do you think our state still needs to do some work in order to rein in our purse strings or to find additional revenue?
There's always room where there's going to be some level of waste in government. And there's still some areas we can rein in. A lot has been done in the past decade to really rein those in, but there's still some work to do. But there are also some agencies that are running as tight as they can and probably need a little additional funding. Now, we have formed a bipartisan joint committee with the House and Senate for budget reform. And in that budget reform committee, they are pulling resources from every group that receives state funding and says, where do you get your local funding? What kind of national funding do you get? What are your expenditures? And so that when we make decisions on a global scale for budgeting, we're making logical decisions. I was taught to budget on a family farm, and we sat at a table similar to this and would lay out our goals for the year and what it's going to take to get there. And that's what we're trying to do, is lay out our goals of where we want to be in Alabama and how we're going to be able to get there. Now, the general fund budget and the education budget has benefited by a booming economy. And the best way to fix a budget shortfall is to continue to provide jobs, keep unemployment at record lows, and make the money go to the persons that are out there in the community working every day. And that will, in turn, Alabama will get a return on that investment through the income taxes they pay, the job creation through it, and the economic development drives both budgets. And I think we're realizing now some of those gains, and I hope we get to realize them for several years.
Given the recent federal tax cuts, do you think those will end up impacting Alabama's budget favorably?
I think they will impact us favorably because it's going to put more money in your pockets, and you will in turn spend that money the way you want to and hopefully spend it in Alabama in ways that will turn back into the economy. It's opened up gateways for our companies to do expansions, creating more jobs, and I think there's just a trickle-down effect. Now, there's always some advisors that people will find in any budget, but when you're opening a path for people to make their own success, I think we're on the right track.
As a member of the House, what do you see as the biggest challenge facing the legislature this session, especially within the House of Representatives?
I feel that this legislative session is going to be shortened because we've got the budgets, and that's the #1 priority this year. But in the background of the entire discussion, we've got a mental health crisis in my mind brewing in this state, and we've got our prison reform, we've got opioid crisis that's out there, and a lot of that's tied in together. But when I talked earlier about planting those seeds, do you know how they measure how much prison rooms they're going to need in the future? They take 3rd grade reading levels and evaluate where they are, and that dictates the pathway that most likely those children in that age will take, and they schedule it. So if we can improve those reading levels, improve the opportunity for the children coming up today, and those that are entering the workforce today, and those that are trying to provide for families today, if we can focus on the opportunity, we can fix a lot of those other issues. We have got to spend some money on our prison system to improve them. The federal government's already dictating that. I've toured several of our prisons to get an understanding for the people I represent. If we're going to have to spend $1 billion, here is how and why. But the overlying issue is, to me, is the mental health issues we have in this state that need to be properly addressed and properly diagnosed to address. And I think that we're going to have several bills that already have dealt with that, and the opioids mixed together, and I look forward to addressing it more fluid.
Speaking about the opioids specifically, we've seen several states in recent, and local municipalities as well in recent months, start to sue some of the major pharmacy companies that were responsible for some of these opioid medications. Do you see this as a possible solution to at least the funding challenge of the opioid crisis here in our state?
Well, the manufacturers is just providing a demand that's created out there. There's several layers to that onion need to be peeled back. It's from the prescriber, it's from the person asking for those prescriptions, and it's us as parents that are overseeing youth that are abusing it and being more responsible with our own medication. And people coming out of a down economy, now they didn't have a gateway towards a future, and providing that opportunity hopefully will steer some of those people away from that process and will help them with their addiction issues. But I don't know that just suing the companies. I think trying to create alternatives to the medicines is a better route. There's several different layers that needs to be addressed. And working in public safety, I know it's not just your down and rotten neighborhoods, it's not your redeveloping areas, it's the best neighborhoods in your community is where those opioid addictions are, not just one specific. It doesn't have a tax bracket, it doesn't have a race, it doesn't have a gender, it hits all of us, and we all have got to look at it to find some realize some true solutions. So I don't know what those are. I think it's several facets to it, and to all come at the crisis from different directions.
And then my final question, as an Auburn University graduate, how did your experience here on Auburn's campus help you in your current role as a state legislature and a state leader?
I tell you, Auburn University's campus is one where we even have a day dedicated to Hay Day where you're greeting people. This is a community where you still wave at each other when you meet in the road. You speak when you're walking through a hallway, and people say, when did you start campaigning for office? Well, when I moved here in 1994, I felt like I did. I got involved with my community and found ways to serve my community, and this community opened up and gave opportunities for people like me to do that. I tell you, the education here, the level of research that's being done here today, the bar continues to be raised. I'm happy I was able to get in Auburn when I did, because it's your age group is certainly excelling all expectations, and the warmth that you have here. When I served with 105 other legislators, they all brag on how kind and nice the Auburn community is. And when you can have a great platform for education mixed with a great commonality of interaction with the people, no matter what your viewpoints are or opinions, we're all people at the end of the day. And I'm glad to say that my alma mater is still living that today, War Eagle.